break stuff. Are you just gonna stand there like a lemon? But being good is so boring. Wouldn't you prefer to be smashing things? Come on, there's still time before he gets back. Oh, you're no fun at all.
So, Peter Molyneux has been in the news fairly recently for just about what you'd expect from him at this point. And with this new development in his latest project, why don't we take a look back at what is most likely his most successful project at this point? Well, that and I saw the game in my Steam library and said, sure, why not, this might be something. And something it certainly has been. Welcome to the fantastical world of Albion, where good and evil clash in the most cartoonish ways possible, and you're stuck right in the middle. This is Fable.
Hey, if you keep really still, I can see your skeleton. Far out, man. You're from the guild, aren't you? Man, what a place. If you go back there, maybe you can find our mushroom. I was standing on those stepping stones in that pool where the door talks. Man, it just flew right out of my hand.
So, I'm playing the Anniversary Edition of Fable, which means it has some graphical upgrades, a new difficulty, and a few other things. But at its core, it's still the original Fable from 2004, and it shows. The game is styled like a storybook, even the main menu itself is a big book. Everything's brightly colored, characters have exaggerated features, and the world in general has a very cliché fantasy feel to it. Not to say that's necessarily a bad thing, that's pretty much the intention with the world. Classic fantasy world where you get to decide if you're a good guy or a bad guy, and your style changes accordingly. The music and sound effects fit that same mold as well, and before I go on, I should point out that I'm not someone who grew up playing the Fable trilogy. I was more of a Halo kid by the time I got my Xbox 360, so none of the things that might seem iconic or nostalgic to someone else will really have that effect on me here. And with that said, the style, music, sound effects, everything, they just feel okay. It's not bad, I can't certainly dock it for poor quality, but it doesn't seem extraordinary either. It just seems alright, passable, fitting, that kind of thing, nothing to really write home about for the most part. The music has a few earworms here and there, but that's about it. And the graphics are certainly not helped by the world and level design. I get that the original Xbox had certain technical restrictions, but I think that may have influenced the design a bit too much here. Fable is supposed to be a sort of semi-open world, but it's less like an open world where you can run from town to town and more like just a series of interconnected linear levels you have to stroll through until you unlock fast travel spots. There's no real benefit to not fast traveling unless you're looking for specific demon doors or a location you just can't fast travel to. Because other than the doors and a few chests, there's basically just some enemies running around and that's about it. Essentially, the open world just feels half-baked. There's no real point to it other than an excuse to put down the demon doors and hidden chests. But there's nothing else to it, so it gets really boring after a while. It makes the world feel more like a toy box of action figures getting smacked together rather than any kind of fantasy world. Who knows, that may have been the intention, but with the knowledge of what Fable 2 and 3 became, the original now looks like this weird offshoot with little relation to the others, which is kind of true. And on that note, let's move on to the story.
We must leave. It's not safe here. They're all dead. You don't want to join them, do you? Then give me your hand.
The story of Fable takes place in the fantastical land of Albion, a very cliché land of kings, knights, wizards, and a collection of monsters. But there is one unique thing here: heroes. In Albion, there are people who are naturally gifted with unique power that generally makes them more physically and magically capable than any normal person. These people are called heroes, and despite what the name implies, that's not necessarily a good thing. Your character starts off as a child whose village is ransacked and burned to the ground by an army of bandits, leaving you as one of the few survivors when Maze, a member of the Heroes Guild, rescues you and takes you to train at the guild to become a full-fledged hero. Once your training is done and your character has grown up, you venture out into the world to complete quests, get stronger, and solve the mystery behind your bloodline and what it means for the future of Albion. It's not exactly a bad story, and I personally think Jack of Blades is a pretty decent villain, at least in terms of the presentation department. What's more interesting are the choices. The game constantly presents you with choices on how to proceed in both side quests and the main quest. These choices, along with your general behavior in the wider world, will net you points towards being good or evil, allowing you to decide to get a good or evil ending. Good and evil mostly affect the story and how you look, with good making you look more angelic and evil making you look more demonic. People will also begin to treat you accordingly and shift the narrative just a little bit. It's certainly interesting, but don't go into this thinking this is Mass Effect's Paragon and Renegade system. Good and evil are what they say on the tin. If you're good, you're helping the helpless, rescuing people, being a shining beacon of safety and goodness for people. If you play evil, you are generally just intimidating and killing most people in your general vicinity. Yet this has no consequences as far as the guild is concerned. You could kill an entire town's population and the guild will still happily give you quests to continue your journey, maybe with a bit of scolding. I don't know, it just feels odd, but it does lead to funny stuff sometimes.
Ah, help! Something bit me and left me for dead. Please, let me come with you.
We can't let him follow. He's infected. He'll be eating our guts before we know it.
We have sworn a traitor oath. We have to help him.
This isn't a good idea. Not a good idea at all.
I can pay well, and there won't be any trouble. I just have to hope someone else will help me, or I won't last the day.
I have a bad feeling about this.
The gameplay is fairly similar to the rest of the game, really. It does its job well enough, but I haven't found much in the way of depth. You've got your melee, ranged, and magic attacks with according stats that you boost via spending XP and all that. But aside from magic though, improving your ability in combat doesn't give you that many changes. You deal more damage with bows and you're more accurate. You can carry heavier melee weapons and you deal more damage, or you take less damage if you buff up the respective stats. All pretty basic stuff. Magic or will powers, on the other hand, give you more variety like summoning, slowing time, force push, etc. But there are still spells that are very much more effective than others. After a while, I found myself spamming Inflame after running into a crowd, and that works pretty easily. There are also these little augmentation gems to give your weapons damage penetration or new damage types, but other than the White Balverine quest, I never noticed much difference. Honestly, the real star of the game are the demon doors. The demon doors are these big stone doors with talking faces on them. Each one presents you with some sort of puzzle to solve before it'll open and give you whatever's inside, like a weapon or armor or so on. Some of them are pretty simple: get your combat multiplier high enough, deal enough range damage, give the door rows, that kind of thing. But others are a bit more open. The main door I think of when I think of a good demon door is the one that requires you to commit an act with high evil alignment in front of it. Now, you could go through the effort of gathering a bunch of people in front of the door and just trying to kill them all, but that's annoying. Instead, you can find the merchant selling, quote, crunchy chicks. Get about 10 or 11 of them, and then just eat all of them right in front of the door. Each one gives you about 5 points towards evil, so using all of them right in front of the door will easily get you inside very early and give you a very good early game weapon. That's the truly interesting part of Fable's gameplay, I feel. The social gameplay, how you interact with people through expressions and items, and the demon doors do just that by turning some of those social mechanics into puzzles that make you think about things a little differently.
You have a whole set? That must be worth a bleeding fortune.
Yeah, I smashed open the crypt and it was all just lying there.
You'd better hide it to make sure no one else steals it.
Don't worry, I've got it stashed all over the yard. No one's going to find it. Not even them undead what's wandering around. Only thing I didn't manage to hide before they turned up was the helmet. It'll be all right here for now, and I'm keeping them gates locked till I can sell the lot.
Shh. What was that? Someone's out there. I better go.
Yes. Get out of my house, you bloody peasant.
All right, I'm leaving. I just needed somewhere to sleep.
And that is Fable, the Anniversary Edition, but still. It's a decent enough game that's very clearly held back by being an original Xbox game. No amount of remastered graphics is going to fix that. It's nowhere near as good as people with nostalgia goggles might think, but it's also nowhere near as bad as people who bought Peter Molyneux's promises back in the day might tell you. It's an alright game held back by overambition and the technology of the time. At this point, we can only hope that 2 and 3 get ported to PC in between Molyneux's NFT ventures. This has been TheRatMan, and I will see you all later. And lastly, a special thank you shout out to my Patreon with a $5 a month pledge is Scarlet. Thank you for the $5.